Okay, so this is day, make sure, 2053. 2053 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. It just changed over to March 16th, 2026. So we just had Rose Sunday, which is the middle of Lent. Hope everybody had a really blessed day. And, we're going on and on and on, 2053 days, um, because that's what it takes when the institutions are infiltrated and the oversight is infiltrated. You can have a U.S. Army soldier blow the whistle on the Jeffrey Epstein cartel trafficking network and Fort Bliss's cartel infiltrators that are involved in the Walmart mass shooting um, be forcibly removed from his barracks room, taken down to the basement room, and his life taken from him, his remains, his body stolen off of the base, and remains abused. Evidence indicates his organs were harvested and his body was then trafficked for disposal across the border to the likes of Plenitude Crematorium, which was now raided, and over 400 bodies at that time were discovered, rat infested, and fraud, because some of those bodies were members of people's families that had paid for cremation, and instead those bodies were uh, warehoused there in the most despicable, filthy circumstances, while um, the families were given urns full of crushed, pulverized construction material, or even animal bones. So this was crimes against humanity, the desecration of the dead, and sacrilege on a industrial scale. And stuff like that happened. Um, that is confirmed. It's not AI generated. It's not um, speculation. That happened. And why? How can it get to that extent? How can it get that bad? And it's because the people that are actually doing it and participating and engaging in it are the ones that are in our system, that have taken the oath to, and take the taxpayers' money to do the oversight, to be uh, in charge of permits and licenses and law enforcement, and I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm saying key positions that uh, are, uh, blocking any kind of true oversight, true law enforcement, and also polluting our very agencies by retaliating against those that do take their oath of office seriously and their duties seriously, and retaliate against them like they did with Richard. So I know for a fact, because I saw it with my own eyes, that Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz wasn't totally okay with what they did to Richard. He had whispered to us that he wanted to tell us something, but he never found the courage to do it. And he was shaking so hard, his hands, his whole body was shaking. He was a wreck, y'all. and he engaged in the evil instead of doing what was right. Um, he absolutely gave us very important information that because he wasn't totally groomed yet and trained yet in what to say and how to be so deceptive, um, but he was on his way to be that way, a very hardened criminal, a very hardened criminal. And they gave him a job at the YMCA um, to be put around children, you know, to be put around young men. And I think he shouldn't be around any young people at all. He should be held accountable for his cowardice in such a position. Um, when he had the opportunity, even he could have found a way. He could have found a way. We were so available. He attended our rallies and everything. He could have found a way. He could have slipped us a note. Um, he could have really thought about what he was doing. Command Sergeant Major, come on. Um, and he was just shaking. There was others like Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, who's just pure evil. He was just so used to doing it, just pure evil. With the JAG, y'all, with the JAG. The JAG, telling him what to do, telling him what to do, telling him the evil spells. Um, so the very people like Bob Moore targeted Richard when he was alive. He's part of that group. The very people that are part of the group with Leilani Hart, with Dallas Hart, with the prime suspects, with this Mormon faction cartel, philanthropists, um, they are the very, like Sylvia Brundefert, that, was the first president of the Texas bar, um, getting taxpayers' money, but absolutely doing an evil job, an evil job. Going on to the Commission of Judicial Conduct, which President Trump uh, really exposed now, that these judges, we have so many judges that have a different agenda, right? Their agenda is not justice. They have owners, I guess. They have they're narco judges, right? Um, and because this is all about the criminal trafficking at the border, just about everything leads back to the criminal trafficking at the border, the organ harvesting, the babies, the black market adoptions, um, the drugs, the weapons, the equipment, the ammunition, the child trafficking, the um, human trafficking, the the fraud that goes with it, the contracts that go with it, the NGOs, humanitarian aid that so much fraud was conducted. Was done by that. The um, all the fraudulent LLCs, because when you make this kind of money, you have to money launder. So a lot of fraudulent LLCs, all the fraud. Then you have the fraud in the sports because you have to money launder this money. And you do it through gambling, through sports. Then, of course, you have the slot machines um, and the Powerball tickets, right? The Powerball tickets, the lottery, very fraudulent. We know that now because they have to money launder this big amount of money. All this money that they're making through all this other trafficking that they're doing. And then all the deaths because you have to shut up the whistleblowers that don't like it. The worst type of crimes against children. So you have, it all leads back to this border, the fuel theft, the high cost of fuel at the pumps because all the fuel theft and all the fraud that is done. The war in Iran is it leads back to the visas, the getting into the American market to pull off this fraud, to um, to take advantage of our economy. Um, it it's just everything that you look at leads back to El Paso and the Jeffrey Epstein John of God pipeline up to Zorro Ranch, which shifted then to Fort Bliss. And it's can you imagine if President Trump wasn't the president right now for exposing the cartels, the Sinaloa cartels, the CJNG cartel? They were near hidden, in the shadows. The Juarez cartel, now the Mormon bloodline, um, militarized arm of the Juarez cartel. Um, it's he's exposed us all, right? And he'll do it with statements that we don't really like too much, because if he tells us nice, it's kind of like children, right? If you tell your children nice, don't do this, da da da, it just goes in one ear and out the other. But if you're yelling at them and you're saying, well, you're on restriction and you can't then they'll pay attention, right? Then they'll pay attention. It's kind of like a little bit of a tough love, saying, "Oh, are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?" Then everybody wanted to talk about Jeffrey Epstein because they were after him, right? They were so after him. And he's like, "Okay, good. Now we're talking about something. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. We're talking about MIT. He just did that with the Massey. Massey's so bad, right? He comes from this great school, but even dumb people or stupid people go to this great school, MIT, and MIT is key to understanding this whole Jeffrey Epstein, Bibi Netanyahu um, history, right? So President Trump is now pointing out the judges. Um, and using the Fed, of course, the control of the Fed, which is a private bank that was created really to it's like the biggest Ponzi scheme, the biggest theft, they're a big problem. The very people that are supposed to be regulating our money are putting us in $38 trillion of debt, um, and love war, funding both sides of the war. They've done that for generations. So he's showing how they mismanage money, billions of dollars for the Fed building renovation, for a renovation, right? And so he's pointing that out and pointing the dirty judges, I call them narco judges in El Paso because that's what they are. They're narco judges. Um, and so, it is just amazing what is happening right now. And we're have been working very hard to file all of this information that we're getting in from people, going over it very, very carefully. Of course, um, this recording that they said was Erica Kirk now has been debunked. I didn't touch that with 100. I just didn't even touch it. I didn't, because I didn't think it sounded like her. But I knew there's just a lot of things going on and AI can be used. But the recording was a real recording. It was just not Erica Kirk. But we know with other evidence that absolutely Erica Kirk knew Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, you cannot be in the circles that she is in and not know Jeffrey Epstein and be there at Fort Huachuca being the signal protector with asymmetric warfare and have the pilot of Jeffrey Epstein be working on Fort Huachuca as an officer, and she doesn't know. Yes, she absolutely knows the whole trafficking. There's not a doubt in my mind that she knows about all the trafficking. And that's why of Jeffrey Epstein with John of God, and that's why it is really a huge red flag for us that she felt it necessary, knowing all the trafficking, knowing all the worst type of crimes against children and women and young men and against everybody because of the trafficking and the sex cult, the absolute sex cult out of control. um, she felt that it was necessary to go to China to help or to go to Romania to help, where right there in her own backyard is where help was needed. And she has the resources. She has, a gold spoon in her mouth. So she had the resources. She absolutely knew the connections. She was in the beauty pageant world. She knows that is absolutely trafficking, the beauty pageant world. And so she knew who Jeffrey Epstein was, and that's all coming out. That's all coming out. There's no doubt in my mind. And we can talk about that for hours and hours. There's so much evidence and so much. But it links to the Abbas's link to El Paso and Fort Bliss, and so her everything that's in the Charlie Kirk's case, and with TPUSA is connected to Fort Bliss and El Paso. There's not a doubt in my mind. White Sands Missile Range, all this military contract, and Allen, Texas, where Patrick Crucius was from, is just mind-boggling how this is such a small little network, really, when you think about it, because it's so, when you do just a little bit of a dive in it, you find the network. They're not so spread out like you would think. And of course, they're in Chihuahua, Mexico, right? They're definitely in Chihuahua, Mexico. And you see that with what I posted with Maru Campos and her mother, and Cesar Hargi, the Chihuahuan prosecutor, and then the prosecutor for the North Zone of Chihuahua, Carlos Manuel Salas. They're in big trouble because Cesar Duarte's house, he was the governor before, um, well, before Maru Campos, but he's the one that got her in as governor when she was a mayor. And we just posted, I should show it to you. It's just such an amazing post. And I want to thank people for sending it to me, because it's just, look at that. Look at that. There's Rafael Arleado Caron, one of the owners of the Plenitude Crematorium, with Argo Gas and Oil right there, sharing office space with Bob Moore. That's what I'm saying. They're so connected. That's El Paso Community Foundation. And they are just absolutely partners in narco crime. Um, and you have Raphael's ex-wife, I think they're divorced now, being part of the City Magazine. You can't make this up. She's connected to the Plenitude Crematorium, y'all. um yeah, Zulim Bordier, yeah, she's absolutely so. And here is the mother, right? This is Maru's mother, who was over the health uh, inspectors and the agency in charge of these crematoriums. And um, you know, there was no permit. There was no permit. She let this this crematorium stack in the most filthiest rat infested. I mean, you saw the pictures. It's just so disgusting. She let that go over and over and over again, over and over and over again. They say 400 bodies. Y'all, it is so many. It is so many bodies. And he was absolutely, um, you know, um, advertising during this time, and 25 years of experience. So this is a Purchase, Rosa Maria Purchase family. Purchase is big funeral home family. This was a funeral home. The Plenitude Crematorium was a funeral home. And they have 8 official funeral homes now linked in Juarez, but there is, they're not they're not counting all the ones in El Paso, which are many. So it is, this partners in crime. He is saying she's the best mayor, and her mother is letting him operate without a permit. And just like in El Paso, we have Representative Veronica Escobar. She's, just such an operative for the cartels and for the philanthropists, El Paso Mormon faction cartel. She's just, just an operative that allows things like this to happen, to allow what happened to Richard. She denied us 2 times congressionals, which is her job, but um, she's protecting the criminals, the cartel criminals, the individuals that um, pollute everything, and engage in the worst type of crimes against children. And yeah, so this is a very big story here that I want to go over, that I just posted on. And it is Julio Cordero again, the legendary FBI agent, the most decorated in El Paso history. Um, just conducted, well, years ago, conducted Operation Poison Ponds. Over 40 people there. That resulted in a raid on the courthouse in El Paso. Just that must have been incredible. And he had over 40 arrests for that of um, corrupt officials, right? And that's what we have today. We have corrupt officials, and he knew that. And we have been really gathering all the evidence for this story. And it's just, so I released that he had named 2 philanthropists that were at large, on his list that he didn't get in Poison Ponds 1.0. The original Poison Ponds. Now it's Poison Ponds 2.0. And what was the trigger for that? Okay, because he was retired FBI, but he was investigating. And how do we know? Because of many different things, but today we have something very important that confirms this, because they want to smear him, right? They want to smear him, and we knew, because of what they did to Richard, that was a lie. We knew whatever they said about Julio Cordero, we weren't going to believe. We wanted proof. We wanted proof. We wanted to do the investigation ourselves, because we could not trust the news. We could not trust the investigators. And we knew that this was connected to our son's case. So we did the investigation, and Julio Cordero named these 2 philanthropists that were at large. He was very moved, really moved into action, um, when we received the designation of death for Richard without having Richard's remains. The evidence was so overwhelming that they they had enough to designate Richard as deceased, and on Fort Bliss, and that really triggered Julio Cordero. He went into action, and he found information, and this is sorry, this is what is so. Let me get a drink. This is what is so incredible, is that now we have confirmation that he made a phone call. He made a phone call to the federal prosecutors in the Western District office, the Western District of Texas office. He spoke to the AUSA there. We know who he spoke to. He made a phone call to the AUSA, to the federal prosecutors. That phone call was leaked. And soon after that, he was killed in the El Paso ISD school parking lot. That is really important for everyone to know, that you cannot even call an AUSA without being leaked and losing your life. This is what happened with Richard at the El Paso FBI office. It was Connell Wenton that leaked Richard's identity, okay? Because Richard was a whistleblower, and he leaked, of course, the FBI knew what Richard was reporting, and he leaked Richard's identity, and soon after that, a couple things happened, and soon after that, Richard lost his life. This is what President Trump is talking about when he's talking about the judges, when he's talking about dirty officials. Um, and he has to be so careful because he is president. He's supposed to be a cheerleader for our country, right? A cheerleader for our military and our country. And he knows that it has been infiltrated by narco operatives, right? Narco operatives, because it all leads back to this El Paso border area, the criminal trafficking. It's so big, it's so much money. They were making billions with the human trafficking, okay? Billions. And they were making billions, $90 billion. Um, I think with the drugs, right? And then we're talking about the weapons and the equipment, and you know, and then all of the fraud through the contracts, and all the fraud through the NGOs and humanitarian aid that they um, they cashed in on, with fraud statements, and of course, all the money laundering and everything else. So, uh, it all leads back. So President Trump is very, very right, um, and we just have to keep on filing, 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 and ask everyone every day to please share all this information, because it's the sharing of the information that is, shedding light on these vampires, on these monsters, right? They cannot take the light. And every time you share, it is a ray of light on these monsters. And it's the pail of water on the wicked witch, right? It is absolutely devastating for them to be exposed like this, like Maru Campos, right? She's so exposed. Her mother is so exposed, like Rafael and his family, the Purchase Arellano family. It is just devastating to know that they have so many homes and one house right next to Beto O'Rourke, and Beto O'Rourke was employing the family of La Diabla, the baby black market trafficker, the lady that would very violently, with illegal C-sections, uh, rip the babies from these mothers, and not stop there, but also take their organs and then dump these mothers' bodies in crematoriums, narco crematoriums like Plenitude, and then cash in on the bodies like, oh, this is an unidentified migrant, oh, that has COVID or something. I mean, in the humanitarian aid, we need to bury this, and then recycle the bodies. And the fraud, the level of desecration, the the selling of bodies for their fluid to, Ukraine was buying bodies for their fluid for their demonic religions, um, for their chest of the dead. So this is all, and I didn't even turn this on to look at comments, um, which, this needs a lot of comments. So anyone that is for these narco terrorists, these narco operatives, is just evil. They're just evil. So this is really breaking news with the Julio Cordero, the AUSA, being tainted at the Western District of Texas. They are absolutely tainted, and they're working to protect the narco operatives. They have become operatives, sitting right there at the federal prosecutor. And we know that the federal judge, Judge Guadarrama, David Guadarrama, in the Walmart mass shooting case, he knew who the Mayellas were. He knew who the Mayellas were. He knew that John Brian Crucius, was uh, uh, a disciple of John of God. He knew that. He knew the Mayellas, their position in the judicial system, the being in the DA's office. I mean, look, Michael Mayella was the federal courthouse manager. He worked side by side with David Guadarrama. This is a narco judge, y'all. This is a narco judge. And, I've made music videos out of this. I've made memes out of this. I come on here every night. And it has to get out there. Where is the media that should tell you that the media there, especially the local media, are also narco media, right? They're narco media for not covering the Mayellas and what Judge David Guadarrama did, and that there are shooters at large, the real shooters at large for the Walmart mass shooting. Um, and Julio Cordero said Patrick Crucius could not have done that alone. There's no way, with the amount of people that the stage crime scene, the amount of people that were killed, all the logistics that were needed, there's no way Patrick Crucius could have done that. And we can tell he was absolutely 100% right, because we have the evidence that it was staged. We have the evidence that there's no way that Patrick Crucius could have done this. We have the audios, we have the videos, we have, just all the evidence. Um, and it's hard evidence. And so, Julio Cordero was absolutely right, and Richard was absolutely right, and President Trump is absolutely right. So, and you have, like a mayor and a governor like Mauro Campos. Mauro Campos went and made a treaty with Governor Abbott, you know, about the border, about, border security. You can't do that. She's just a governor of Chihuahua and he's just a governor of Texas. And I know those are big positions, but those are not federal positions. And you can't do border security treaties at that position. Okay. So they are absolutely narco politicians protecting the criminal trafficking at the border done by the most evilest cartels that are human flesh eating, human flesh peddlers. They're just the worst. And you see that they're protecting and even engaging in human flesh peddling because Mario Campos's mother allowed Plenitude Crematorium to operate for years. And how many bodies were desecrated, right? You can say, oh, 400, and they're counting down, like that's the end of it. No, the problem is Maria Eugenia Galvan, right? She's the problem, the mother of Mauro Campos. And we know Mauro Campos was engaged in the fuel theft with Cesar Paneche, her attorney general before Cesar Haragi. And we know Cesar Haragi, he's over this whole investigation with Plenitude and he's absolutely protecting all of them. He should have Rafael Arliano Caron. He should have Rosa Maria purchase Arliano Caron. He should have Jose Luis Arliano Caron. He should have Zulim Bordier absolutely extradited and prosecuted for the desecration that they engaged in at Plenitude Crematorium and all the fraud that surrounds it. Um, and then of course, Carlos Manuel Salas, he's meeting with them over there, the Arliano Carons, the Purchase Arliano Carons, the Bordier. He's meeting with them. We got word that he met with Raphael, with Richard Samaniago, the county judge. That's another, he's not really a judge, but he's another really corrupt one. But that they're meeting to figure out how to cover this up. And this is on Mexican taxpayer dime, American taxpayer dime. They are getting paid by the taxpayers to do their evil criminal trafficking cover up. And people, there's so many victims and they're getting hurt. And of course, we want our son's remains. And so we're exposing it. We are absolutely exposing it, and they need to be held accountable for what they've done to hundreds of thousands of children and women and families and men, and all the drugs, the destruction of it, the weapons of violence, the mass shootings. And, I thought that Candace Owens hit on something very, very big when she said something is going on with these criminal traffickers. It seems like they're the ones that are involved with crisis actors and stage scenes and all of that, and the vile and vulgar, very violent outcomes of these mass shootings. But the narrative forming around them, fabricating narratives around them and everything to move politics, to move the populace, to hypnotize the populace to get their policies that they want, to get, the Walmart victims funds, right? To get people to donate for Walmart victims funds, and then they pay off their own narco operatives with it. Um, the fraud is just, it's It's huge. It's huge. And so, yeah, I think it's all being exposed. And the more that you share all of this information, the more light that is, you know, um, put on these narco operatives. And I do want to tell you this, we have confirmation that um, uh, people in that are our allies, in high positions are absolutely watching us and watching the sharing and watching our numbers. And so that really helps too. We don't monetize, we don't make any money off of this. And this is all about justice. It's all about the vicious negotiations for the repatriation of our sons' remains back home to us. And it is about accountability for people that would take a U.S. Army soldier and whistleblower and target him and torture him and take his life and then desecrate his body, um, and traffic it internationally. Um, that's not okay, y'all. That is an act of war. That is an act of war with our country. And so maybe, and of course President Trump is really focusing on La Linea right now, which is huge. Um, so he absolutely gets it. He absolutely gets it. And this is an act of war, and he has to be very careful that he does the right thing. And that's very difficult. It's so difficult, um, to weed out these people, you know, from the perpetrators, from the victims. It's very difficult. So, and then I want to tell you that the whole Iran thing is so connected. It's so connected to this and to Nadal Baim, the Palestinian arms dealer. That's the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado of the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM that absolutely monitored every bit of that airspace that led into Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch. And the whole thing with the Zorro Ranch, there's a lot more. We'll be talking about that in the next couple of days. I have a lot to cover with that. Just trying to make sure what we're going to tell you is the truth and factual. So we have to still, I guess, purify the information that we're getting. So thank you so much. God bless you. And I think thank you so much, Laura. God bless you for translating in Spanish. That is such a big help. So I will be back tomorrow, God willing, and you have a great, great night's sleep.